Cool. Hello, George.
Hi, Gary.
How you doing? Cool.
I'm great. How about you?
Good, good, very good, mate. I think you suggested a really good topic last week, tokens. So let's just have a chat about tokens for now. There's so much going on, don't know where to start, but I'll let you start.
Well, it's all about tokens, it's all about usage, and I think it's a revolution in the SaaS industry and also in the AI market as well, because we've seen the traditional thing and licensing scheme in SaaS business, which was subscription, that you knew exactly what you were going to pay each and every month or a year. It was as simple as that, with packed features, packed usage, packed, I don't know, whatever. But now things are changing quickly because of AI, partly, because of agents, because of the ability to create value at a very granular level and deliver that individually to our customers. And because of compute time as well, which is definitely related to usage and not duration, monthly fees, and things like that. So we've seen a rapid change in the market and a trend of incorporating into subscriptions or anything else tokens and pay-per-go schemes. The important thing right now is that nothing has prevailed. It's not like SaaS that
Yes.
eventually prevailed against standard licensing schemes before, I don't know, 15 years or so. It's not
Yeah.
like that. The market is still emerging, and what we see is some hybrid schemes out there. And there is a war, a monetization war.
Yeah.
And this covers everything. It's not just AI anymore, it's the whole SaaS industry. So this is what I see. I don't know, what do you see?
Yeah. So I would say the same. I'm trying to step back and look at what is really going on. And I think whether we like it or not, it's kind of moved beyond pricing and monetization. And I've been looking at some of the good and bad things that companies are doing with rate limits, not telling people, moving stuff out of it was in this category, now it's not in this category. There's all sorts of stuff. And I'm trying to think what is going on here. And I'm kind of seeing tokens, and that's why it's quite interesting when you raised it last week. Tokens is much more like an economy. Almost like the crypto bros wanted to create in 2017, 18. And they wanted to kind of move the economy from where we are to obviously a token economy with crypto at the base. And I kind of see the same thing happening with these tokens because I don't think I have to be conspiracy theorist to think in 10 years, George, a lot of the stuff we do may be via token. How much, if you've got young kids, how much time they're allowed on the screen, how much time they're allowed to use some sort of revision app. You could argue that, well, parking's already on some sort of token, but not necessarily tokenized. I can see them basically trying to run every company on a meter, the way we pay for our electric here. Not quite sure how you do it in Greece, but we pay for it on a meter. And I can see that meter controlling pretty much every single activity around the business world.
Yeah. Um, there is a big difference, though. I mean, your electricity or telecommunications meter-based billing is a great example. And we are used to it. This is the norm, but there is a big difference because there the token is the actual job done. I'm talking to my mobile phone or I don't know, to my landline, and I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm talking with someone for a specific time, and I know that I'm going to be billed based on the time that I've using my phone. Or the other way around for power and electricity, more or less, you know that if you turn on some devices, then eventually you are going to be billed more. This has to do with the actual end outcome. With tokens, is not exactly like that. That's the problem. tokens is the way that developers understand the AI and the SaaS world. It's a lower level, hidden from business stakeholders and individuals layer that translates to compute time and actual cost. So it's an internal view. It's not an external view.
Yes.
If you remember with Agentforce, Salesforce tried to do the same thing with tokens in the beginning, and then they changed that into completed business actions. So moving away from tokens and moving to something that is more visible and easier to understand from the business point of view. But the real, not danger, but difficulty here is to actually find what are these jobs to be done and concluded, first of all.
Yeah.
What are the tokens that needed to be included in this job to be done? And also, what are the risks that the supplier, the vendor, is willing to take? Because eventually, you don't really know for a specific job done from the business point of view if you're going to use 1 or 2 or 1,000 tokens. And the customer doesn't care about that. They care about the end result. Job done based pricing versus token based pricing, they are not the same thing. And I
Yeah.
think this is what creates a lot of confusion. And there is one more thing. If the customer sees that there is no transparency or there is a lot of complexity and no predictability in what they are going to be charged eventually in the end of the month or whatever their billing period is, they tend to walk away to go to something simpler. And this is why we see some mixed hybrid schemes and nothing has prevailed fully yet. And I don't think this is going to happen for the next 5 to 10 years. Like it's going to be a bit vague.
Yeah. I hear you. But I think if you think about, I don't know if you saw the recent results from the big cloud providers, the big three. They were insane results. 25% here, 40% up here, billion extra investment there. And you're like, okay, to our point, everything I know about economics, I've learned at uni about economics, kind of gets thrown out the window. Let's be fair. That happens a lot in modern times, let's be fair, because we're not really on top of economics now, but it literally gets kicked into time, as they say, or whatever, because you're like, how can this happen? How can you have just three companies who, with bugger competition, excuse my language, who are able to increase basically revenues and even margin by significant amounts? From an economic standpoint, it makes no sense whatsoever. All we've talked about perfect competition and this and that kind of didn't really work. And so you think, why are they able to charge on a metered basis? And I think it comes to your point perfectly, George, only because there aren't 20 firms out there. And if there were 20 firms out there able to provide decent cloud services, I'm not quite sure. I think your point's 100% valid. They wouldn't be able to charge on a meter because the meter is pretty obscure into how much value you're getting in terms of the cloud and the compute cost and the running cost and the elastic, etc. But they're able to do that only for one reason, because the customer has no choice. This is the pricing model and you have no choice.
You're 100% right on that. The actually lack of competition is definitely a significant factor right now, and there is a reason for that. The entry barriers to enter the LLM space are huge, with billions, tens of billions of heavy investment and some time also to create something significant. And in the beginning, we only had one competitor practically. It was OpenAI. Now we had also Claude, but it took 3 years for Claude to be something really significant and a key
True.
player in the market. And for some time,
True.
we weren't sure if it's going to be Claude or possibly Gemini or anyone else. Eventually, these two plus Gemini are the top three players. And we've seen how competition pushes prices back at lower levels. If you remember, before some time, OpenAI launched this higher tier with 200 dollars per month, the professional pack. And then Claude launched their own pack at 100, and eventually OpenAI matched their price at 100. That was a result of competition, because Claude now is highly regarded,
Yeah.
especially in the professionals market, and so they had to eventually accept Claude's positioning and lower their prices. So if we see 10 more competitors, but this is very, very difficult, highly unlikely, but if we had 10 competitors like
Yeah.
OpenAI, then obviously all prices would be lower and margins would be very difficult to increase, and so on and so forth. And there is one more reason about the ability to increase margins. I'm talking about the variable margin
Mm.
based on the variable cost. The variable cost is compute time practically. That's all there is to it. But we need to also remember that there is a fixed cost in order to support this huge infrastructure. These are all the investments from Anthropic and from OpenAI, the tens of billions that if you include them in the overall exercise, then obviously margins are not tiny, they are not existent, they are at loss, which is an obvious thing. It's a huge investment in the beginning to win the ecosystem of AI, and eventually, after perhaps 10 years, you will be able to actually take some money out of it. Right now, they are just generating traction, they are penetrating the market, and they are creating a big revenue-wise machine, but the profit is not there, definitely not.
Yeah. So I think the token is definitely going to be I think people generally agree as well, it's going to be kind of the unit of account going forward. I'm paying still like $20 a month or whatever, £20 a month. But I know that won't persist for the amount that I use it in, say, 2-3 years' time. Either the amount will go up like dramatically, like 60, 70, 80, or they say it's on a meter in some way, or they'll be rate limited. But essentially, I don't see them doing any different from cloud providers in 5 years' time, because that is a model that works, and we've seen the results for the last 10, 15 years from cloud providers. They get bigger and bigger, people get more dependent. So I kind of think I'm probably making a bet personally for my career as well, that we're going to move to a token economy and everything is going to be metered. Not everything, but a lot of the important stuff is going to be metered in a business context. At home, it doesn't really matter. There'll be less usage or whatever. But in a business context, this is my punt. This is a complete random bet that if you believe that everything's going to be metered, then really we're really talking about how are we going to get the maximum yield out of that input versus output, and who is going to be the best at transmitting that energy via tokens, which is our brain energy, into some, as you say, a useful output consistently, ideally, not completely probabilistically. And that, I think that's where you get kind of the digital agency model is really, really playing in my mind of 15 years ago, well, actually, even today, you and I cannot put on a very good Facebook meta ad, even though we can look at what we like on the web, we can use ChatGPT, we can use Claude. We are still going to be suboptimal at placing ads on a really complicated meta advantage platform, and similarly Google. And I think the agencies did a fantastic job of converting basically our request into something quite insanely complicated in terms of putting ads on, and then turning the handle and getting 2x, 3x ROAS or whatever they got out of it. And I think even currently, the platforms and the way that, whether it be APIs, MCPs, clause, and this, it's actually really complicated to get a really consistent good answer out, George.
I think the key distinction is what you mentioned between business users, and especially heavy business users, versus more light business users or individuals. So we will see different monetization schemes prevailing for different categories of customers. Actually, I see this already with the different approaches from OpenAI and Claude. So Claude is more enterprise focused, based on trust and heavy systems and coding and all this stuff. It's already moving towards a more token-based or job-done-based and
Yeah.
usage-based monetization scheme. They can afford to do that because they are dealing with more sophisticated users that have the technical background, the ability to predict their users or limit their usage, and actually they use the system a lot. And they use it not for personal purposes, but for corporate and enterprise purposes. So the stakes are higher, so they can afford to put more time and some additional money in order to invest in cloud and do whatever they want to do. But if we are talking about a smaller company with limited budgets, no time to actually start predicting things or limiting usage or all these things, this could be a headache. For individuals, even worse. They
Mm.
wouldn't do that. I don't think that the electricity bill or telecommunications bill meter scheme is going to prevail with individuals. What we see here is another approach, which is OpenAI's approach. So what they say is, okay, part of our clientele is enterprise business. So there we are matching more or less, we're doing more or less what Claude is doing with APIs, blah, 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 all these things. But for smaller users, individual users, that they don't want to get into the hassle and headache of calculating things and taking
Yeah.
care of the usage every day, what they do is what? They're moving to advertising, which is the simplest way that you can tackle monetization issues. This is what Google did before 20 years with their search engine. So OpenAI has, I think, in their first two tiers, the free one and the $8 per month tier, they have also advertising to compensate for the low cost, and they use that as a means of penetrating the market and capturing the overall individuals and possibly some lighter business users part of the economy. So they're doing exactly or almost the same thing that Google did before many, many years. I think this is going to work. And I think that those two companies are going to capture a different part of the economy, a different part of the market eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I would say, yeah, you probably could have one or two players maybe in the ad space, in the kind of AI platform ad space, and probably not many more. So you're right, there'd be winner take all. And then if you look at the Anthropic problem, and I'm still struggling with this, George, myself, because I use it a lot, so much so that I recently got rate limited, which never really happened, other than maybe in the early days it happened once, maybe 3 years ago. And you think, okay, the only reason why I'm being rate limited is because I'm kind of trying to massage an answer. And it's like you going to a shop, George, and you choosing, maybe not shirts, because that's easy, because you know what colour shirts, but you choosing a suit. You're probably going to, if you've got a shop with 100 suits in and they're all like of your type and your price point, you're going to probably look at 50 of them. And then it's going to be arm in and R in. And I think similar to the Power BI problem that I noticed when I was in a bank, Power BI bought, I thought, brilliant, and ClickView, etc., bought a brilliant ability to analyze data. But the average person, and I worked in finance, so we're not idiots, didn't know what good data looked like in terms of output. Because good data is really storytelling. Because you want to put it in a pack, and whether you want to put it in S1 or a pack, or you want to sell it to the Financial Times, you want to tell a story with that chart. And the average person isn't really a good storyteller, let's be fair. And the average person isn't really good at looking at a SQL database and working out, how can I make this into a pretty chart for Twitter? And I think OpenAI and Anthropic struggle with the same problem.
Yeah, storytelling is important definitely for everyone, not just Anthropic and OpenAI or
Yeah.
the AI space. It's for all startups and even established companies. And I think they have a different cover story because of the different focus in the market. So OpenAI is moving towards a more open economy,
Yeah.
although they are accused that they are not open. But they are moving into a more open economy, AI accessible to everyone, and things like that. And this is why the advertising, and this is why the free tiers, and this is why they open up to smaller customers, and so on and so forth. Whereas Claude and Anthropic, they're moving towards bigger customers for heavy jobs, heavy things, and so on and so forth. And they said officially that moving up, they're not introducing and won't introduce any advertising at all, because this is against their enterprise view. And I think they're building more on trust, more on solving complex problems, and more the cover story is becoming more and more that we're a heavy enterprise company, and we want to serve in a trustworthy manner, credible way, all the big customers out there. If you happen to be a smaller customer and you can fit in one of the smaller tiers that we have, that's okay, but you are not the core audience for us. So the first company, they're trying to capture the whole ecosystem all around the world, and they are leaving some space for Claude, for Anthropic to capture the enterprise world with a different cover story, trust versus openness. So I would say that their names are quite fitting for the cover stories,
Yeah.
by the way.
Very, very true. I think their approaches are interesting, to say the least. But I'm still trying to think, maybe say if we go forward 2-3 years, where is kind of the AI controlled? And this comes back to tokens. Really, who is in charge of kind of the tokens? Is it like the CFO, like people finance bros and girls? Or is it the product guy and girl? Or is it the engineering team via who really kind of control cloud-ish with kind of a few limits from finance? And I'm trying to think how does the organization move to a kind of much less budgeted world and much more dynamic? Because with all due respect, the companies still are forecasting EPSs and revenue, which means they must be forecasting revenue and costs. They have to. And that alone means that they can't have runaway costs, even if they were to front load R&D and you allow to almost overspend tokens, and you produces so much value in terms of output, but that value won't be seen for another, say, 18 months in the sales cycle, marketing cycle. You're constantly producing really good product, George, but it takes like 6 to 18 months to come to market, as you explained before in previous podcasts. And so the token cost will always be higher, and then the value will lag later. And I'm just interested how public companies deal with the fact that George is constantly now in invent mode. He's like almost an Edison type thing. But actually, the value only is seen in every 4 quarters later, perhaps even more, in terms of revenue, if it works out. And I don't know if we're mentally set up with our stock market for that kind of George is producing value, he's creating spaceships, but it would take 12 months before we get any, I don't know, space travel revenue or whatever.
I think this is the most important problem. That's the fundamental problem behind all token-based pricing, because you have many layers above tokens in order to reach something which is a concrete result for a company or an individual. Tokens are the cost. Practically, it's the compute time and it's nothing else. Really. A token could be completely useless from a customer point of view, although for the developer and the supplier is important because their cost increased based on that. But above tokens, then you have a job done. So let's say you have, I don't know, Salesforce automation. Tokens are doing several granular things, but in the end, you have an offer sent to the customer based on several tokens. The final end thing is the offer. And even that it's not the end result. The end result is, was it successful based on all the predictive algorithms and whatever Salesforce offering to improve your offer? Eventually that was successful or not. So you have two layers above tokens. You try to build on the lower level, which is not understood and very difficult to digest and understand from the customer point of view, even though the customers eventually they will get value, as you said, after a few months and at a higher level, a much higher level. So it's
Yeah.
not true outcome-based pricing. It's not even job done based pricing. It's token-based pricing. This is why I feel that this is not going to work as it is right now. It's like an extension of cost plus view, something like that. And it's a distortion based on the internal view of the suppliers. So I don't think this is going to work. Partly the job done based metering will work, partly. I don't feel that we are ready to do a full outcome based pricing because it's very difficult to know
Yeah.
what's happening after your system has delivered whatever needs to be delivered because you have the human factor, the company's details and circumstances, and so on and so forth. But I think the actual job-based and not token-based pricing will eventually prevail to some extent, but it will be packed with certain usage for
Yeah.
smaller companies.
Yeah.
And then for bigger companies, there will be some enterprise agreements and so on and so forth. But it will take some time for people to get used to it and also to start predicting things. Because if
Yes.
you know that based on tokens or job dance, etc., every month you are billed with, let's say, 5K per month, every now and then you will get some surprises, some spikes or things like that. This happens with telephone bills, everything that we are billed with. Sometimes you have surprises and we don't know exactly what happened. But more or less, we know that our average spending is this or that. But this happens after a couple of years of doing that. And we're not still there. That's the main problem right now. We both need, the supplier side and the demand side, the customer side, to experiment a bit and learn.
Yeah, I agree because you're probably the same with me, where you're doing lots of experiments with your models and analytics, and I'm doing lots of experiments, probably more in kind of storytelling and images, but still loads of experiments and writing. I find it very good at writing, but I'm maybe struggling to see how they move beyond the human in a loop. You're in a loop with that algo is right, that algo is wrong, that's predicted right. I'm in a loop with that story right, it's a bit off, let me take it out, let me change it. And I was kind of listening to a few different podcasts and a few different articles, and there was someone from Uber, an ex-product guy, who's saying that last year they spent their token budget in, I think it was 4 months. I could be wrong, but 4 months. So their 12-month budget is spent in 4 months. And then I listened to Rob Littersk and Ulrich, and they've got a new podcast, and they were just talking about, was it Figma? I think they were talking about Figma as well. That was the main ship. That was the show particularly. And in that show, he also mentioned some of the stats that he'd had from his general survey on his SaaS pricing platform. And he said that 25% are moved towards tokens, and another, I think it was about 25%, are also thinking about tokens in the next 6 months. So these aren't particularly big SaaS companies. Some are big, but they're not all big. And so it's kind of a wave of Me Too, the bad example of FOMO taking over, whether we may be correct in the sense that it's horrible, but it's going to be horrible everywhere and soon, before we know it.
Yeah, I think the Uber example is great because they spend their budget twice as fast as they had expected.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of different angles to see that or interpret that. The first potential reaction from Uber could be that, okay, guys, we need to push back and discuss with Claude or with Anthropic or whatever the company is, to decrease prices or negotiate a better deal. That would be one
Yeah.
reaction. The other reaction would have been really not sure what has happened. That okay, we miscalculated, we haven't predicted because we didn't have enough data, but still it's a bargain based on what we eventually anticipate to get as value out of it. The value is great. It's 10 times the cost, even at twice the budget. So, okay, let's agree with a higher budget, but now we won't be surprised next year because now we know. Um, the truth will be somewhere in the middle. I guess
Yeah.
some guys, some companies are going to be very negatively surprised and they will be very, very stressed with their budgets and they will push back the AI companies for better deals. But some other companies will just say, okay, the value is still there, is huge, is great. We thought it's going to cost us 1 million, but it cost us 2 millions, but we got 100 million out of
Yeah.
it. So it's still great. So there's no reason to push back. I think we will see both reactions. The important thing is there is no predictability even from big, well-established companies like Uber that very
Yeah.
used to deal with data, with AI
Mm.
systems, with complex
Yeah.
systems, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think he was surprised as well. So I can't remember the formula, but he basically on the back of it he said, "This is what I would do next year budget." It was some sort of complex. It wasn't Monte Carlo, but it was some complex formula, which is not too complex for someone in finance, but too complex still to completely roll out on a 10,000 man woman organization very easily because it involved three. It was at least 3-factor model, if not 4-factor. So, but it did answer the question of one of the questions basically of who controls the usage. In all scenarios in a public company, it's generally finance with a little bit of pushback from every department. This is how much you're going to spend on seats. This is how much you can spend on, I don't know, plane visits or whatever, or plane trips. This is how much you can spend on general entertainment. That's how much you can spend on R&D. And we've come from a world where that's been the norm. There's been that sort of diktat, primarily from the CEO plus the CFO in bigger companies where it's all about guidance. Smaller companies, it's just Wild West and VCs. So the question is how quickly do we get to a level state where someone has got their hand on the till, on the cash register and say, no, 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 no. Yes, you can use it in risk because you guys know what you're doing. No, you can't use it in compliance because you guys will go crazy. Yes, you can use it in finance, but no, you can't use it in. So I think there's very quickly, and some firms have already said that we're choosing who can use the tokens. And before 2023, 24, it was like anybody, engineers, customer service. And now I've heard a couple of ramblings that it's not so easy. And then this kind of culminated in, who was it? Basically promoting, I can't remember her name, but Prabhakar maybe, someone to head of AI enablement. I don't know if you've seen that. And so she, I think it's a she, I'm guessing, so I don't want to upset anybody, but say it's a lady, head of HR, 700 people in Atlassian. I think they've got, I don't know, thousands. Say they've got 10,000 people. They laid off some people the other day. In charge of 700 strong, which is an insane number for HR anyway, but 700 strong people in HR and HR related things, L&D, I assume. And she's now been given another 2,000 plus to make it up to, I think, 3,600 is the number I heard. And that department's now called AI enablement, which which is a big department, don't get me wrong, it's like a third of the firm. But that's rolling out AI, swapping maybe some headcount for AI from AI for headcount, whichever way round you're doing it, working out customer services, where do we implement it, how do we implement it, how fast, how slow products. It's a big job. And that's kind of what you're kind of getting towards of, George, of who is going to control this token machine and decide what is value, for who, when, why, who delivers it, how it's produced.
Well, I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel here because this is happening already in other systems that now they are not so innovative. But when they were introduced, they were extremely innovative. And, they were breaking some rules. So when a CRM system is introduced into the company, there are the users, CRM users, whatever, contact center, sales people, marketing people, whatever people. You have the IT, that's responsible for the infrastructure, and of course there is a budget, and everybody is fighting for some additional budget to buy some functionality or more usage or more seats or whatever, and eventually there's a finance department that may reject some of these proposals and reduce budgets and so on and so forth. I don't think something different is going to happen here. Although companies feel the urge to reinvent the wheel and create a different mechanism, especially for tokens, especially for AI, and so on and so forth. Unless it's an AI company that has extreme cost and dependency from other companies and compute time, which is a completely different thing for most companies out there.
Yeah.
These are some additional new tools, incredible tools, definitely, very, very useful, and can be expensive, but there are tools. And I think that all companies more or less have the right mechanism to negotiate between different departments, understand the usage, the cost attached to it, and also the value attached to whatever they are doing with all these tools, and eventually reach a conclusion and a budget. So there is no single point of full authority and responsibility for tokens. It will be a combined effort and decision-making process as it's been done for ages within most companies. Again, I'm talking about most companies. I'm not talking about AI companies. There it's a completely different thing because this is at the core of this is what they are doing, actually. It's not just a tool, it's what they are doing. So it's a completely different case there. I think this is good. It's going to happen.
Yeah, so I kind of agree, but I'm going to maybe push back a little bit, George. A couple of people I've spoken to who work in finance have been saying that, one, they are the chosen few that are able to use it, definitely. They are the chosen few that have been allowed to use free will with Copilot, etc., etc. And the second point is that they are literally running like hamster wheels saying, okay, do we need to reorganize the way we do budget and the way we do forecast budgets and stuff? Because some of the stuff you said there and some stuff we've seen, that some of the stuff you've learned in AI is purely R&D. There's no necessarily customer value immediate yet. It's just R&D. When a tech company and a startup, that's exactly what they've been doing. They've been saying, I'm going to spend 102% of my revenue on 40% marketing, 25% on product or whatever, and 25% on G&A and expansion or whatever, just because that's just what we do. Because we're allowed to run like that. But in a bigger organization where they haven't got this R&D 25% mindset, which startups actually always have, even now, where Meta has that kind of huge amount of R&D spend. That's the change. So it's not new, George, at all, because Google has got an R&D mentality, so's Amazon, so's Meta. But for the ordinary company, particularly banks and finance companies, they haven't got a 10-15% R&D mentality. They should have, and I think AI is forcing that, but I don't think they do have yet. And that's the kind of shift. If I have that much R&D, then either margins drop, or they drop people, or we cut back somewhere else, or we increase prices.
Again, I think it's a combined effort. I mean, let's take an example. Let's say that you are working in a company that has an internal IT department to do things for the company. So it's not an SaaS company, it's a company doing different things, but it has a big IT department. The IT department has internal customers They need to develop things for them. And they are using Cloud in order to do their software coding. So first of all, they need to ask all the other respective customers, internal customers, so departments, what are their needs, what they need to do. They need to translate the actual business needs and jobs to be done to usage, tokens, whatever. This is something that the IT department is going to do. And eventually, based on that, they have a integrated budget. And they have a request for the CEO, for their finance department, and so on and so forth. And eventually, this gets approved or not. And then there is a fight. You cut my budget by 10%, and that means that the marketing department won't have sales force enhancements to the extent that they want, and so on and so forth. And after this fight is over, eventually everybody has usage, budgets, everything, and everyone eventually is theoretically satisfied. Nobody's satisfied ever. But anyway, and what happens in practice, we get surprised. This is not something new. Because when, for instance, we had on-premise infrastructure and eventually Google Drive came on, Dropbox, Azure, and so on and so forth, and they introduced a new cloud-based infrastructure where you pay per usage and not something fixed, then there was surprise in the beginning because we didn't know how to calculate Azure cost, because we didn't know exactly the usage and their tokens and how these things work. But eventually now companies, after so many years doing that, they know exactly because they learn. This is going to happen with AI. But right now we're at the same stage where cloud was first introduced and everybody was surprised and feared that the budgets are going to explode and we can't predict that. We can, but not yet, because we haven't experimented a lot. So give it some time, and I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to use whatever is in place, more or less. Obviously, we need to adjust things, but more or less, what we have, the institutions that we have in place, the decision-making process that we have in place are more than for AI tokens and all these things, but not yet because we really don't know how these things work. And also, pricing and monetization changing quickly. Let's not forget that. It's not something fixed like Azure that more or less is now mature. AI pricing is not mature at all. It's changing a lot. Remember OpenAI decreased the Pro plan from by 50% in a split second. So it's not fixed. Not yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. I think Rob is very good at highlighting this, Rob Litterst, and there's one other guy, I can't remember the guy on Substack, who kind of goes down a rabbit hole, who will say a lot of people are using tokens as currencies. They're vendor friendly, not really necessarily customer friendly, because the vendor has a token, and the token, if they treat it as a currency, we know that you can devalue a currency quite easily. You can devalue it in many ways. And he was saying that because it's not hard, but because there's so much else going on, it's hard to keep a track of when something's been slowly devalued. And I basically find this myself. I've got a really good image app, which is called Leonardo, which has been bought out by Canva, I think about last year. And so I can see, because I run a query probably every 2 days at the least. And so I know the query cost eight tokens, or 8 credits, let's just say 8 tokens or credits. And therefore, if it costs 9, I'm like, well, where did this inflation come from? What changed in the model? And similarly, like recently, don't know whether it's mispricing, George, but the ChatGPT-2 image is insanely good. Yet it's priced at 1/5 of in my tool, by the way, 1/5 of the next best one, which I think is Nano. Nano Banana is the next best one. Nano, I think it's Nano 2. And so I'm like, wait a minute, I was paying 40 credits, literally, last month for a really good output, Nano, and I'm paying 8 credits for what is a better output. And so I don't know whether they've mispriced it or whether it's introductory offer, which I'm still looking every day and think, is it introductory? And so there's so much going on, he was saying, that the companies that will do well are the companies that treat tokens like the Fed treat the dollar. It's an extreme, but he was saying because that even like an 8% manipulation, not manipulation, 8% change is, as you know, George, is huge. I've seen your graphs every day. It's huge. And the ordinary person won't notice 8%. Oh, it used to cost 8 tokens. Now it costs, I don't know, 8.5. They're not going to notice that.
This is exactly what's happening with competition. This is exactly the case because you learn how to do things in a more efficient way, better, in a more efficient way, so you can afford to price them lower. Plus, if we're talking about OpenAI, because they have huge funds, huge pockets, they can afford to do that to win the ecosystem, even if their profitability is not great or they are at loss. So this is part of the competitive landscape and how it emerges and evolves through time. And with AI, it shouldn't be a surprise that this evolves very, very rapidly. So when AI first introduced DALE, it was okay, nothing more. And now it's great, it's spectacular, it's possibly the best image creation system in the world, and so on and so forth. But this happened through 3 years of evolution and heavy investment. And perhaps after a few months, someone else will be better, and so on and so forth. The same with Claude. When it was introduced, it was a nice alternative, but nothing to die
Yeah.
for. And it took at least 2 years to get established. And now it's considered number one in software development and not Codex or OpenAI. So it takes time, and through heavy competition, things evolve, and that includes prices as
Yeah.
well. And we will see that. Most likely, prices will stay competitive for individuals and lighter users because there is a fight for the ecosystem and the whole awareness thing. But for enterprises, I think that prices will go higher eventually through different
Yeah.
packaging, different monetization schemes, focusing more on tokens like the surprise for Uber and so on and so forth. I bet that many companies had similar surprises, and I'm betting also that most of them won't push back. They will just increase their budgets to meet their needs because they do understand that there is huge value attached to whatever they are doing with Claude or OpenAI. So it's competition, yeah, as you said in the beginning.
Okay, so this is a clip moment. What would you, this is just obviously just your guess, what would you say in terms of, say the price is 1x now, what would you say the price would be for just general AI use in terms of like corporate use in 4 years' time? So it's 1x today. How much x do you think it's going to increase? 2x, 3x?
I think that for extremely light users and individuals, the advertising scheme is going to prevail through either free tiers or very low price tiers, exactly what OpenAI is doing right now. So there we will see even lower prices or even free tiers prevailing. But for higher users and business and so on and so forth, in 4 years, not extremely for heavy users, but not enterprise users. I would say 30% higher, tops.
Okay.
Nothing else, perhaps even less. But for enterprise users, I wouldn't be surprised if not the price may not increase a lot, but the usage, eventually,
Yeah.
they will understand that's much higher. Their actual budget will go 2 times or three
Yeah.
times more than they are right now.
Yeah.
So
That's, I think that's
different.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. If you imagine you're a pricing guy, or you could be a girl, but pricing guy or girl in a HubSpot, say, let's pick HubSpot because they've all had a shocking run with ServiceNow, HubSpot, Salesforce. How would you be looking to rebrand yourself? Basically. So, you see all this change come in, and whether you think it's pricing and packaging, or you think might create the idea of the meter or token yield, whatever you see coming, how would you be looking to kind of use this, I think, crazy times to kind of be more prominent and get a more prominent role in that company, be at the center of what's going on? What kind of name would you come up with, and what kind of work you'd be doing to be that person?
The HubSpot example in the CRM space is a great example, I think, as opposed to Salesforce, because HubSpot targets startups, smaller users, company users, and software, and Salesforce targets enterprise users. So you see the difference in their approach already. Salesforce is moving into Agentforce, more complexity, more token or business or actions or job done based in
Yeah,
usage based schemes. And they are
yeah,
experimenting a lot. It's not a successful case yet, but they are moving definitely towards that direction. Whereas HubSpot is not, is staying at the traditional subscription based model, adding some AI functionalities and so on and so forth. I think that's wise. And this is exactly what I would have done if I were at their shoes, and if I had the company that sells something, the web SaaS solution. If I were targeting smaller customers, introducing too much complexity, I think it will damage and hurt our relationship
yeah,
because these guys cannot afford to be surprised. Uber can. They don't have any problem. They paid
yeah,
20 millions last year and now they will pay 50 millions, and that's
yeah,
okay because they have a multi-billion business, so that's nothing. But for a smaller company or individual, even worse, to get surprised and double your budget, practically you can do it, so you won't do it. So I think that Salesforce is doing a favor to HubSpot right now, because if someone is a smaller customer, they will definitely stay with HubSpot and never consider Salesforce because of the complexity and because of the uncertainty. What is going to
yeah,
happen with pricing? So this is what I'm expecting for smaller companies, not smaller companies, for companies targeting smaller customers to focus more on the simplicity of their
yeah,
model versus enterprise customers and then
yeah.
companies targeting enterprise customers. I think that's the main differentiator right now, simplicity.
So say if you were that person and you're in a finance department of say 5, 6 people, and you're quite political and you want a more prominent position. So you want to be the equivalent of FP&A, who have got quite prominent position in companies now, because they predict the results and they do all sorts of stuff and they do like the board packs. How would you use this amount of worldwide change to get pricing really elevated as like, yes, we must be in the boardroom? This is a really tough question. What are the sort of things you would be doing to say, well, actually, this is so much change here that I might be I want to be captain. How do you become captain of the ship?
Well, now we're not talking about the purchase prices, but the price of our goods out
No,
there,
we're talking
I
about
guess. Or
us personally. You personally, say you're a corporate VP. How do you use this amount of change to really elevate yourself as like a really important person in that company? Well, you've been already important, but yeah, they probably got 10, 15, 20 pricing people. But actually, how do you say, we've arrived, pricing's here, this is our time? So
I think it's
it's
the
tough.
best time for pricing people right now, and especially for pricing leadership and new initiatives within the company. Why is that? Because you have the perfect store, and it's a good store, a good store, a good store for pricing big at the spotlight again. Why is that? First of all, you have AI that disrupts everything: your business, efficiency, revenue capturing, value capturing, agent-based pricing, and all these things, token-based, blah, blah, blah. All these things disrupt everything in the market. So pricing as well, pricing of most goods. Then you have all the macro and market level turbulence from geopolitical turbulence and friction. You have macroeconomic events with inflation, raw materials increasing, fluctuates, exchange rates going up and down, and so on and so forth. All these affect directly or indirectly, eventually, your pricing. So the
Yeah.
one thing that we can't afford to do anymore is set our pricing and forget or treat pricing as an afterthought, as a
Yes.
small task that we need to do eventually before we launch our products or before our budget and so on and so forth. And but the main thing is how pricing people deal with that, with this great circumstance. They deal with that from an analytical perspective. Let's analyze this huge amount of new data that we have and figure out the best possible pricing, or they treat it as leaders and understand that this is their breakthrough time. This is their
Yeah.
opportunity to make a difference and lead the change within their organization, pricing wise, AI wise, or anything else. I think that pricing people who identify themselves as leaders and understand that this is a great opportunity to lead the way through the corporate ladder and hierarchy. Eventually, they will win and they will make pricing more popular and more understood with its benefits and merits and so on and so forth to a broader audience within their company and outside the company. People who feel that it's just another analytical exercise, a big headache, it's more complex than before, but that's great and will take some enjoyment through just accomplishing the analytical exercise, I think they will fail. They will fail miserably. They won't do anything and they won't help their companies. So it's pricing leadership and a great opportunity to exercise that and get great benefits for the company that someone is working for, but also for the pricing function and pricing mechanism. Great opportunity.
Okay, George, on that core celeb, I think we can go to war on that statement. On that core celeb statement, or like Nelson on the victory, HMS Victory. So that's really, really good. And I think to me, that's kind of what, in all the chaos that's going on, I think that's the most exciting thing. What you said there, you summed up perfectly why pricing people should be looking at what is a perfect model. That's all lovely. But as you said, George, it's going to change 5 times. So somehow we've got to use that amount of change, political change, economic change, environmental change as well, to say, actually, why isn't pricing at the centre of this? And I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's the rallying call. But hopefully it's recorded that well, and I'm going to try and cut and splice that as like maybe you in a kind of army outfit saying, let's go to war. Like you could be like Mark Andreessen saying it's time to build, it's time to go to pricing war. No, I think that's hitting the nail on the head. No one knows what
Not
the end
price war, a
price
war
war.
for
Yeah,
better pricing and not
like the
price war. We need to
uh,
avoid that.
I think so, but that's brilliant, George. So hopefully it's recorded quite well. Sometimes it's flicked in and out, but it records individually on each end, so it doesn't record in one end. So you'll have a separate track and I have a separate track, and it brings them together. And hopefully it will produce some clips, which I'll send over maybe tomorrow morning. It should produce some AI clips. But that last statement, if we can put an outfit on you, mate, you could be the Pete Hegseth of, maybe not Pete Hegseth, maybe that's a bad example. You could be definitely the army major of this war. I think pricing people are missing a trick here. Looking for the answer, but the answer is irrelevant. They should be looking for the political kind of capital. Okay, my man, that was a good one. Okay, cool. Well, I'll see how this. I'll send you some stuff and we'll have a chat. Super, George. You have a good. Okay, excellent. Bye bye. Bye bye.